We have shipping faster and safer with AI in engineering. Please welcome Brian Sappey. Over to you, Brian.
Great. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you very much for the introduction. And as Hoover said, we're going to be doing building faster and safer with AI at Semify. This talk here today is definitely not how to write prompts. This is not targeted at people or folks that are just trying to get into prompt writing. And as far as how to go about it, everybody has their own, I think, path on that right now. And there's been a lot of other sessions and topics that cover that quite a bit. So this is more about the numbers and measurement and some of the cases and executions that we've done over the last year in our journey for AI at Semify. And what started really about a little over 2 years ago has led us down several paths. But the big one for the engineering team has been where we can leverage this in our day-to-day. And like most things I try to tackle, we certainly want to make sure that we're measuring for success and understanding if what we're actually doing and utilizing is of worth to the team. And so, again, a couple of the driving factors here. AI is here, obviously, and I know it can stir up quite a bit of emotions with a lot of people, which is normal. Good and bad. It is here, and I think leveraging it, to the best of your ability and what works for you is critical. Big driving factor for us at Semify was we had very long PR cycles. We had a lot of debugging drag. There was a lot of context hunting. It's an older code base that we have continually modernized, and I've got some updates on that as well that I think would help bring AI to the surface of how it's been beneficial. But just being able to go through the code base quickly and efficiently without a whole lot of institutional knowledge or knowledge base of the code has been really helpful. And then just in general, some lagging development timelines. And the goal here was to speed with quality and safety, which speed we knew we could do. Obviously, AI will enhance and speed up all your development processes for certain. It will write code if you want it to write code. But the big two other objectives that we needed to quantify in that measurement is the quality and safety. The other thing we were looking at too is not necessarily hyper-focusing on prompts. It was more the patterns, and then developing rules first. So object-based rules that we could feed in, and of course that included indexing of our code base. And then in addition for that, the ability to do MCP connections. And we looked at that in both directions. We actually released our enterprise API software about a year, and it's probably closer to about maybe almost 2 years ago. And one of the things that we wanted to exercise was an MCP for that as well. So we actually pushed our docs into Context 7. So we saw it as both not only from an internal side, the ability that we could leverage some of these approaches and architectures that were out there, but we could also share back and make integration into our systems easier, especially for the AI tooling. And then, of course, measure relentlessly. Like that's a thing that we continually do. Now, this was the presentation I did in Vegas. That was the goal here, but I couldn't help myself. We have now been in this journey for, let's see, we really started, I guess, about a year ago, relentlessly measuring it. And I had some numbers and data that I presented in Vegas in late September. And I'll refresh those and give everyone an opportunity to see how we've come since then, because I think it continually tells a story of maturity, and then some of the things that we've learned on the way and how it's really improved our QA cycles. A couple other discussion points I want to cover today. I do think there is a hiring void. I think, I've heard a lot from several community members and questions about hiring and, finding good CF engineers. I personally have never had an issue. I think that if you are stuck in, looking for very specifics in some type of a boilerplate fashion, yes, you could probably struggle in the environment of finding what you call CF engineers. But there's a lot of different strategies at play, I think, when looking for those CF engineers. And the reason I bring this up is I do worry about some of the hiring trends that I've seen. And I think my initial thought process and evaluation of where the market was starting to go with the hiring strategies, not just in CF, but in general, it really impacted the junior engineers, I thought. And there's a couple of things I wanted to discuss on that as well. And we exercise some of the items I'm going to discuss today. We've been engaged in these ideas and concepts. We've rolled them out. This is not just going to be a lot of talk. I've got some data to back it up. The other thing in the tooling sets that's important to cover as well, what we're using and why. And then I'll definitely give you a lot of data by the numbers as much as we can without revealing too much, but it'll be sufficient enough to tell the story that what I'm trying to drive across here today in this session. And then lastly, just a quick analysis. I always like to say do less with less, not do less with more. Cost controls and monitoring and QA is a big piece of it. I am very big on doing things as cheap as possible, but doing it well and safely. So real quick with the hiring strategies, I think, as any kind of a hiring manager who's on this call, there's a lot of complexity right now, especially in the AI area. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure. People are getting to use AI instead of people, and that certainly has come up. And then you can make arguments across all tiers of the talent levels that you're looking to engage with as far as a team when you're trying to build one. I personally have said for some time, I think the junior developers are most exposed to these AI driven task automations, mostly for the fact that, a lot of that, what you would maybe consider what we've all came up before AI, gritting our teeth on and getting our chops in and repetitions, a lot of that can easily be done through AI, which there's very few arguments, I think, against that would invalidate that statement. But I also see that no first job trap for new grads as being a really hard thing for us because as we start to age through, it's always been that concept of a pipeline. Just like with code, you want good young talent coming in that you can teach correctly, get them engaged in the proper fundamentals, and I say you train them to stay, not or train them to leave, not to stay. And I think it holds true. You can see good retention rates if you put them in good positions and you train them properly. So they do have options, but they have a commitment to you. An environment that encourages growth and opportunity, and definitely dabbling in things like AI, not running away from it and shooting it down before you even give it a good understanding of how it could be leveraged in your organization. And I think if you keep draining that talent pipeline, it's going to come back to bite you. And so I've got a quote here and a couple of articles that I've sampled through. And again, arguments can be made on both sides of the coin, but I can tell you right now that over the last year, we've had really good success with this model. And our execution at Semify was to hire small junior cohorts and focused on that testing, observability, and security and delivery, and get them paired into AI. So the last thing we wanted to do was say, hey, junior developer, welcome to the team, and here's AI, go figure it all out. I can only imagine what we would get out of that. With no guardrails, no concerns for security and deliverable, what I would consider good sets of code, it would be a disaster. So rather what we did is we created, I always like to fall back on human in the loop with anything AI we do, because we do a lot with it, not just coding, but for deliverables in our business, for the operational side of the house, but more of a AI in the loop apprenticeship. So the ability to take junior developers and pair them with our senior developers who are very well versed in good coding standards and good practices and understand the security and the methodologies needed to grow a code base into a scalable and enterprise solution, and then start having them dabble into the AI and really allow them to leverage it as almost a senior assistant, but with a senior assistant definitely guiding them in the right path. And so far, what we have seen is tremendous output. So we started with this strategy back over the summer, and I had a little bit to share with it in October, but end of September when we were in Vegas. But it was only really 3 months of testing and data to look at it. It wasn't enough, I think, to tell the story. We saw good success with it, but since then we have seen a large contribution in output from those junior cohorts that we brought in, and both of them had very small backgrounds in coding. They were really fresh into the business and zero CF experience, should I mention that as well. And over the time, through a pairing process, getting them involved with the senior developers and augmenting some of their discovery and some of the writing with AI in a very structured environment has yielded quite, I would say, very positive results. Both of them are contributing to the projects Both of them are understanding how to do peer reviews. Both of them are understanding how to do bug analysis and detection. We've got a lot of logging and we got a lot of insights that we've put into place. And so by that method in the indexing with I don't care what the prompts are. I care is that there's enough context and understanding from these engineers in order how to interact with the AI in order to get some evaluation. And it has been a learning process. Again, we're not fully dependent on it, and I'll give you the numbers on the usage patterns that we're seeing and the integration into the actual team. But we've had very good luck with that. And again, it's a story of building a CF team. It does frustrate me a bit when I hear the community talk about not being able to find CF resources. It's just silly. But anyway, that's a whole nother presentation we could do. We're hitting it out of the park with the two junior engineers, and they're learning quite a bit. And what we are producing are two top-notch cold fusion engineers that can do a lot of different things, not just hyper-focused on the one product. So moving to the tools and cost, again, cost is a huge part of this for me. I'm very budget conscious, and it's critical that we maintain some type of controls in place when we do that, because as you know, a lot of these tools can get very expensive. But we hyper-focused our integration into AI for coding with 4 cornerstones. So we have Cursor AI, which I absolutely love. And yes, it's gotten a little expensive on certain things, but there's cost controls you can put on that. We use Jira for our project management in a very simple state. We've got all kinds of integrations that we've done with Cursor in Jira now to improve our workflows. And then I'll never miss a beat to give just a call out to Get Kraken, as I still think it's one of the best Git GUIs on the market. And that too has integrations into Cursor, into Jira for us and our workflows. And then obviously Selenium is a big part of our automation and QA engineering. I love having QA engineers, but I also love having Selenium, and they complement each other very well, especially from a cost perspective. As far as Cursor and AI goes, in Jira, I've created some demo Jira accounts. I didn't certainly want to share our source code here on the presentation, but the gist of it here is that actually we've evolved quite a bit since I've put this one together. We've got a lot of integrations going in on the daily workflows, and one of the big ones here is we have the ability to leverage a lot of Cursor's background agents to do a lot of coding tasks independently, and that has just amplified since I've created these slides. In fact, I don't know if anybody has played with GPT Codex 5.2, but it is absolutely phenomenal, especially from an architectural standpoint, like in the planning mode and asking it questions and helping to develop a plan. It's very good, and that's to say the least. But we took it in another direction with this. We really wanted to put as much automation as we could in our tooling sets to where these agents would start to provide inspection immediately. So one of the things right now we're working on with this is actually we've got all of our air tracking logging into a system that is constantly being monitored. And it's great from an engineering perspective. The team can go and see it. They can quickly create Jira tickets. They can quickly go in there and make assessments and spawn resolutions with a really fast MTTR and like turn things around very quickly. However, it's still manual. And I'm finding with AI, the more and more we're using it, I really want our engineers to be focusing a lot on the creative side, not necessarily some of these more mundane tasks. And as we mature our team and mature our usage, it's coming in really handy for creating these agents to start monitoring a lot of the things that are extremely tedious and very time consuming. So one of the big releases we're going to have soon is we're going to have our AI Cursor agents continually monitoring for bursts and surges and errors. And those are going to do diagnostics very quickly. So we've got some POCs we've already run, and it's pretty phenomenal. It's able to look at changes in patterns in our usage and including any kind of errors or exceptions. It's able to have full context based on the error information that we feed it. And it's able to go through and not only detect potentially where the problem is, it can do an early assessment. It can also look at the previous releases. It can look at any other context, include any of the PRs that have done, and actually pinpoint with detail where we're having our problem, how it originated, and then some quick solves, which in turn then fires into another API that will create Jira tickets and prep everything ready to go. So really what I'm asking for is a cold fusion engineer who's a human in the loop in this case, coming in, doing some diagnostics on top of it, a quick overview, Some cases it's going to hit a home run, some it's just not going to be good, and they'll have to dip their toes in. But the reduction in force on that one is pretty significant, and it's a huge time saving. So all these integrations are tied in very nicely. And then lastly, we also have Slack coming in for the real-time monitoring. So we've tied that into our Datadog, both in our container monitoring and our more traditional stacks of applications. All those things are being monitored and watched, and all of them are talking to each other. So we have Jira talking to Cursor. We've got Cursor talking to our engineers. We've got Cursor integrated with Jira. Jira's back over to Datadog. Like, we have this loop of things that are helping us to be very smart about where we're spending our time and effort in debugging. So again, these are the types of things where I think AI has a lot of beneficial use if done correctly. But part of that is you've got to be measuring it to see if it's just creating a bunch of noise and other issues. And again, I'll share those data points with you here towards the end. But these are very useful. Like, we're able to stream these in even with just the notifications in Slack via Datadog. We've got a lot of synthetic testing that we're doing in addition to it, and some AI interpretation that's very easy to pull directly out of these builds and these notifications that are coming in. So in theory, we can create Jira tickets directly from Slack with the context of the issue, and those trigger points can actually hit some of the Cursor agents and do some of the quick analysis. So I find that it's a golden opportunity if you're even thinking about AI, if you're still on the fence, or maybe you're running into some combativeness in the organization where maybe it has a bad rap for whatever reason. These are some pretty fairly safe, I think, areas that you can start to explore where you aren't necessarily fully committing to AI code going out to your production servers. But it is a good, to me, a thing you can measure and show efficiency gains at a minimum across your organization. So next up is Gitkraken, and this all ties in. I think it's important too. I think there's probably almost all the products that are pushing out into the ecosystem these days have some AI agent or assistant baked into it, which is fully expected, and some are not equal. I will say Gitkraken's first attempt on some of the AI integrations was lackluster, maybe to say the least. But they have come a long ways. One of the things in here I meant to update, and I'll call it out. As we're moving more and more code, one of the concerns with AI, when we look at those efficiency gains and we see the increases in our PRs and our code pushes continually increase, not even as we add headcount, but the multiples that we're seeing are, to me, one of the indicators that AI is in use. But we can see the jumps when we can see the commits and the usage of AI increase through the logging. It tends to go hand in hand with an increase in PR. So of course that presents some other challenges that would trickle down in the organization, like our QA efforts. It creates more code contention. We do step into shared commits from time to time, and there's some other conflicts that can come in. One of the nice things, I don't know many developers that enjoy writing commit notes and PR descriptions when they do submit over. I don't. I never did, but it is a very nice feature that's baked into Gitkraken. So outside from its absolutely stunning visual displays and its drag and drop features for those that aren't that comfortable with true Git commands, and some of the other nice integrations it has built into it. I don't work for them and I don't sell their products, nor am I a reseller, but I will tell you it has been very beneficial, especially on junior team members, in getting them up to speed much quicker. One of the more recent releases that they've had, and it's been out for a little while, is they have contention checks that are targeted where you're allowed to open it up to a local level. So if you've got 20 developers working on your code base, one of the biggest challenges that I've run into is you can have multiple contentions, and someone's got to take care of that at some point. There's an AI merge conflict feature in here, and it does okay, but it's going to make some assumptions, and just like what we would think, it's not going to be perfect. So you're going to have that still ill effect of like not having a human in the loop. Could come back to bite you on that, and it can cause some obviously some big issues with what how you're handling those merge conflicts. If there was a merge conflict on this screen here, this screenshot of Gitkraken that you would see, there's a little target icon that now can pop up, and you can link it to a team account. And when you're in that team account, all your developers are in there. It's a shared space. it'll allow you to see when one developer is making changes to a file locally, and if you're another engineer on the team and you're making changes, it immediately will start to detect them. So not only have they baked in some really nice AI features, but they've opened up some tunnels on there too that allow you to do real-time contention checks on the team. So again, it surfaced as a problem, fully expected with the rate at which we're pushing code and the rate at which we're doing more and more with AI. And we were able to remove that symptom is, hey, let's see if GitKraken can help with this very early in the process, which it has. You talk about shifting left on everything from QA down to your workflows. Like this is getting down to the developer local level, which is phenomenal without having to write any scripts or do any extra tooling or anything like that. It was built in, of course, with the AI behind it as well. It makes things really nice. And of course, as most do, they have an MCP integration here. So data-driven decisions. Let's look at this. So this is getting into the data. So the initial slides that I'm going to show you here it was pretty much derived from everything that we had snapshotted as a team back in September before the Vegas conference. However, I think it's wonderful to say, is it actually still working? So we had a small subset of data, and then we jumped into January, end of January. So it's been, I don't know, what is that, 5 months now since then. And we are now coming up on about a year of sampling this in a production state. Like, hey, developers, here it is. Now, I will paint a few things here. Since September, we have added, we are at a team of 20 now. And when I started a couple years ago, we were at 2 or 3. So we have scaled up very quickly with a team. We have multiple tech stacks at play. We have a lot of moving parts, and the coordination and the processing needed to do this in a very short period of time ramp up is critical. And I have to say, like, measuring it is the key fundamental. So whether or not you're in the AI state or not, or you're considering AI, or you're wanting to determine if AI is beneficial or not, I think just the sheer fact of trying to measure a lot of those velocity points and understand where you have the weaknesses in your infrastructure, in your development process, SDLC is very beneficial. And it's never done. So this is going to be a continual thing for us. We're learning a lot from it and some of the things that we've picked up. So if we look back, and again, this is a snapshot that I pulled with a 1 month sampling. So I pulled August through September. This is about a week before we were in Vegas. And even if I were to show you some data going back maybe the quarter prior to this or 3 months prior to this, it was very small. We had about 3 active users at that point, and the chats doesn't mean a lot, but it was a very small number. It was only a handful of developers that bought into it. As far as the lines of agent edits, respectable over the 30 days. And again, that 25,000 per engineer is heavily skewed because we had a big on-ramping of users in the organization over the month prior to this. And then tabs accepted was an interesting way I felt we could measure usage. So when we encourage the team is to, if you're getting back good code, give the feedback to Cursor and make sure that you're accepting the tabs so it can start to understand and learn some of the patterns here and what we deem as acceptable. Now, we've also done a lot more than just that. We don't want to rely on the tabs accepted because it is an easy thing just to hit return, or just not comply with the request for input on that. And this, again, goes back a little ways, but we've done a lot more in that too. We have a rules engine, we've indexed our code base, and yes, we pay for the privacy. And yes, it will pull code samples, what's necessary to do what it needs to do, but that is not stored in memory. So I'm sure tinfoil hats can come on, and there's more to that story, but I'm not here to debate that. I do think, though, it does make you rethink a lot with your security and your strategies around how you're storing API keys and what you are putting into code and not. So if anything, maybe this is a good step in increasing some of the awareness, I think, in how you are constructing your code and the guidelines and requests that you're pushing back out to your development or engineers to say, hey, this is great, but we do need to have some guardrails. And I think that is just a general good protocol of usage. Why this chart here is interesting to me, I will tell you the honest truth. When we first made this accessible to our engineering team, there was a lot of skepticism on the team. And I think it's important here because I think, and you know, I think every team probably runs into similar things. It was mostly our senior developers that were anti-AI. I would say the ones that have been in it for a long time. I won't say the old dogs, but the guys that have been in for a very long period of time and been coding were definitely a little bit more reluctant to use it. And I completely understand why. I supported the momentum of, hey, we have a tool, let's take a look at it. You can run some POCs with it. We've done quite a bit with it so far before we roll this out to the team. The adoption needed to come from, I believe, not just using it, but actual acceptance of how it could benefit. And it was funny, we pivoted. Instead of just saying a force mandated on this, it was a, hey, we have this tool available and use it. And it came in really handy for two major projects that we had that had very tight timelines and I think extremely aggressive deliverables on it. I full-heartedly believe that AI stepped in and helped make that possible. And what we saw was about a 20 to 25% decrease in time to create the code and test cases. And as we continue to measure things and look at how the team started to engage with it, it became almost like a virus. It took off. The team started to use it, maybe a little bit too much trust in it for a brief period of time. But as we could start to see the data, the uptick hit, and it became very socialized at that point. And it was understand that this is a great way to enhance, or at least not at a minimum, provide some guidance on some coding. So of course, one of the things you want to monitor for it is over usage, over acceptance, but you got to look at the downstream effects too. You got to look at how many bugs are being created, what's your defect rates, your cycle times on your testing. All those things tell a story of acceptance and good acceptance with good positive outcomes versus just, hey, we're using the tool and we're writing AI, but we're actually creating all kinds of fun problems. One of the funny things too we discovered in this is one of the teammates didn't realize there was a whole UI component to it, like it, where you could actually go into the IDE and use it. It was agent based only, which was we picked up on it when we were looking at the chat types. And so there was a lot of data that we were able to extract out of it. It also gave us a pretty good idea on migration plans, impact analysis on what percentage of code in our system is being modified and asked for, and then also acceptance too. Like it was a very interesting statistic to see that our .cfm and .cfc files only had about a 28% acceptance in that 30-day period. And but on the other side of it, for any YAML, SQL, Python, and JS code that was pushed, and I should have put HTML on here as well. It was like over 60%. In fact, I think there were several months where it was a 70. And I have to think there's a lot of reasons for that. I've come off the feeling just a little bit, but I thought it may have a lot to do with just the documentation, where it was pulling from, availability with the MCPs, and then just size of what it had to index against. And I don't think that's necessarily untrue. I think there's some things we've done to augment the acceptance and help better tune our own usage of AI, but there's still definitely a gap on the language acceptance last time I checked. So this is where it gets interesting for us too. There is a product that is bolted onto a cursor for what they call BugBot. Now, I will throw you just a little bit of a warning here. It's okay. I think BugBot has come a long ways. It was rolled out as a beta not too long ago. I think we started to use it sometime maybe over the summer. I think it was like maybe August or July. And the initial ones came out like they do. Cursor does this a lot. It's open, completely free. Go at it. It gets you sticky. You're all over it. You get a dependency. You build it into your systems, and then obviously they charge for it. So there's been a lot of back and forth. And I had a scare one month. They had some billing issues, and we went through the roof. And it was a mistake, and Cursor owned up to it. We were easily able to tell that story, and I think they realized it was some changing in the pricing subscription models they were working on, but it was a scare. But needless to say, another reason why it's important to keep an eye on your data and your usage in here. And so the concept for integrating BugBot into our workflows was no brainer. The idea here is that it was triggered on a PR, and like there's a lot of configuration settings you can do directly through your administrator in Cursor to where you can trigger multiple bot executions. You can do it when like a PR gets released. There's also some things you can do with calling it more in a programmatic state. Initially, we rolled it out, and it was not meant to be the final roadblock per se in a peer review process. It certainly too was not to be determined that it was verbatim or it was going to be words in the Bible, like it had to be followed to a T. And BugBot was essentially going to derail your project and potentially pull the task back and make you rework it. We saw some false positives for sure. And the sampling here from June the 23rd, I guess we did start it. It would have been maybe closer to May, but from June 23rd to September the 17th, and I've got some updated numbers on this. We estimated, I think realistically, it was about 100 to 125 hours of development time saved. Why it was really nice is it was able to go through the code and look for optimizations on SQL queries. It was able to go through the code and find optimization on conflicting tags, incorrect attributes. It did a really good job at understanding that if you had maybe some if conditions in some code and it came back that maybe it was false or it was true or whatever, and there was some dynamic code in there that affected the display, and you had a mismatch maybe on some columns, it would actually detect that, which I thought was a really cool feature of what it was able to do. So it was really bringing in full context of how the code was supposed to operate and all the impacts on the edge cases that could occur. And so it definitely helped us. And from what we saw during that period of time, I think I told you we started with like 2 or 3 users in April, and then we slowly ramped up and the engagement increased until September where we had 9. Now we're up to 20. But the 7 users that were, I would say, actively using BugBot and going through the PRs, we estimated that hour saving was pretty legitimate, 104.5. Again, it was ranging somewhere around 100 to 125, but it was great. And what we were finding was a lot of those things that it was catching. I think this was the more beneficial story point on it, was that it was catching it prior to going out to production, and they would have been very painful errors to find. Some of them were JavaScript errors, as you know, like not always easy to replicate. We do a lot with Datadog to find JavaScript errors, which has been a godsend for us. But just the errors that would have spent some time with any developer having to go through all the logs and then recreate it. And then, of course, you get into the fun loop of it's not happening on my browser or my session, just to be kicked over back to the end users and for them to report it right back, which is really embarrassing. So a lot of those types of errors, actually, I give good credit to BugBot in finding those. It did a phenomenal job at understanding not just the Cold Fusion code, but it was looking at everything as a whole. So all of it together, it was really beneficial. So during that time, we did about 189 PRs reviewed, and then the 209 runs, that's just some of them got rerun. We experimented with that as well. And then out of the 160 issues, it resolved, I think it was like 200 and some that it flagged. So we although we had a fair amount of false positives in there, our developers were able to look at that very quickly and weed through those, but it did find a fair amount of the bugs that I think would have went out. And if you look at that 57% number, good chance that would have been closer to less than maybe 10 we would have caught in a normal peer review. And I'd say 100% of those would have went out. Like we would have went out and then we would have been troubleshooting that time. So I do sometimes think that hour estimate might not even be doing justice for what we actually found in the BugBot process. Now, this has gone through some new iterations. There is another alternative here. So we experimented with measuring, can we get away from BugBot and make this more of an automated process through the agents and say, hey, Cursor, when we get to a certain point in where we think an engineer is ready to do a PR and push it out, do we have the capability to replicate BugBot ourselves? Like, can we create a rules testing engine? And so we experimented with that. And what we found was, I don't know if it still works because we haven't tried it again. We ended up going a different path with it. But we actually asked Cursor to act like BugBot and do the review as it would do on a PR, and it worked, which was the free version around it. I don't know if they've figured that out yet. I would hope to think that they're smart enough to be running analytics and AI and realize that their own system got gamed, but it did actually work. So it was able to trigger a it was actually spot on from the test cases that we were in with BugBot. But we've moved on since then. There's some other really cool things that are in a state of POC right now that we're measuring to see if they're effective, but it's going out to more of a lint style testing with BugBot and then a rules engine based on what our standards are. And if the trend keeps going in the direction that we're seeing with the testing so far, I suspect that we'll have our own modified version of a BugBot process out in the next quarter. And this is going to be the ability for us to run this in a continual cycle against the code base as well. So it's going to be a continual triage of checks against certain parts of the system. We're doing a lot with synthetic testing, and we're also doing a lot with some manual testing. And then, of course, we got Selenium running like crazy, but they all eventually, the complete picture here is to continue to measure the parts and make sure that they do tell a story. And once we get that full cycle in, I believe that's, to me, one of the most beneficial ways to exercise AI. And those are very time consuming and expensive manual things that we're trying to avoid and just allow the team to focus on the more creative things. So this is the initial outcome here, what we saw in the first cohorts of testing. I'll give you an updated slide here at the end of where we are now, even further down the journey. But initially, what we found, the development time, there's about a 40% reduction on AI-assisted work with the right context. That number has dropped, and I think for good reason. I'll explain why. The debugging time, we believe that there was about 50 to 60 hours saved per team, per period via BugBot and earlier catches. That had a few other things wrapped into it, but that number seems to be holding. And I'll show you some cycle times here in just a moment over a whole year to show you where we saw some really big improvements when we started to incorporate AI, and it lines up perfectly. The BugBot accuracy, we had it about 60, 70% correct, 30 to 40% false positive. We have tuned it a lot. I think the BugBot accuracy has jumped, but again, we're not solely dependent on BugBot anymore. There's other things that we're bringing into the mix for testing on that as well. So it is very complementary to BugBot, but I don't think we're going to get to 100%. It's just not possible. I'm pretty satisfied with where we are in the usage of that tool at this point. And then adoption, that is 100% for us, and that is something we can achieve with 100% certainty, is getting them engaged, not running away from it, adapting to how it works, and finding what works for us. And I know it's not going to work perfectly. We could tee up exactly the way we do everything here at Semify. It's not going to be a rinse and a repeat for everyone, but the concepts and the core usage of it, it's the same. And I have confidence that we are in a good spot with AI. I of course absolutely have concerns about the security with it at all times, but it is making us rethink the strategies when we do things with coding. If anything, to me, again, as I mentioned earlier, just reiterating, is I think core to using AI. You got to be very aggressive on the guardrails, making sure that rules are being followed, make sure that you're getting good measurement on acceptance, looking at your continual movement of PR cycle times, what your bug rates are. Is it putting a lot of stress on your QA side of the house? Throttling those tickets through. So all those do tell a story. And just to give you a little bit more on the pilot case study, this is the first cohort that we run. We ran a cycle of this, testing all data points, running the AI, selecting certain projects, and in particular, we found a very high deliverable. So you put your money where your mouth is, go big or go home, and this was one of those cases. We picked probably one of the most critical projects that we needed to get out, and we threw AI into the mix of it in a very controlled state. We had 6 weeks so the initial estimate with a senior dev, top tier developer, great guy. We had him scoped and estimated about 6 weeks for the development of the project. It was probably 2 weeks too many for what we were needed to do to hit our goals and deadlines, but I would argue that it was probably closer to 10 weeks is probably what it should have taken, but we landed on the 6 week mark. We threw AI into it with about a 30% usage, and number could be off a little bit on that, but it was pretty close. The first release of that, which was in an MVP state, which satisfied that initial estimate, that was at 6 weeks. We were able to do it in 2 weeks. That launched with one defect. To this date, I think we still are sitting at like one or two defects with that project. So it has aged very well, and it was done in a very early stage of our AI adoption, and I was very excited. Now, I knew that wasn't always repeatable without some controls and guidelines on it, but we had very good success. And of course, this gave us enough of a reason from the data points to continue down this path. One thing I will say from a control agent, we had multiple comparable projects that were related to technically the same project, but they were separate releases and separate parts of the application. And we ran the secondary one that we were targeting in that test cycle with no AI. And funny thing is we backed up on the deadline with that. We brought AI into it towards the end, and we had resolutions on items that had been open. And I think we were still about a week out, and we were able to solve those in an evening. So it just really helped move things along. So a couple of things here, the operating model, obviously you've got to have a good plan. You got to have some kind of design specs around it. The humans got to be in the loop. That's a big part of it. You cannot do this thing and just expect it to work completely without any kind of guardrails or involvement from your engineers. And context is key. So understand that the more docs, the more specs you can give it, any MCP connections going out, all of that, and actually writing those acceptance test cases and letting Cursor help with those and do some of the review process was really good. But obviously, it's all completely pointless if you aren't measuring this. So it's very easy for any of us to go, I think, and say, hey, we're using AI. But to me, if you're not at least looking at the engagement and the usage and the effectiveness, it kind of defeats the purpose. And I think you get yourself into a bad state. As far as the rules engine goes, it has one. These are really important. Allows you to do that injection of context. We've linked a lot of hard work and effort we've put into creating a very good instance of Jira to manage our day-to-day on the projects. Has a wealth of information, and those acceptance criteria tests are very important at the early stages of the project. Getting the docs into Cursor sessions, hitting like context 7, making that linkage, even for like running Bootstrap or something, like get it in there and let it do its thing without you trying to cut and paste from Stack Overflow, which is a disaster, in my opinion. If you're trying to go that path of training it and getting it to write what you want, use the official documentation repos and write your own rules engines or rules files. They're not difficult to do. Also, make sure that you've got good test coverage on these. I think that's critical, and it can really help with that. We're using AI now to write some Selenium test cases, Gherkin style. Like there's a lot in there it can do. And make sure that like those PR templates that you're creating, all the how you're going to do self reviews, the what and the why, the risk, all of that can feed into to make that rules engine very strong and very powerful. That should help reduce some of those issues that you could leak out. So a couple of the MCP servers we have integrated with, and this list has changed. This is probably another slide that could use an update. We've got Jira, Confluence, Git, Selenium, Datadog. We've got some other API connections. So again, the why here, if you get an opportunity, it's fewer guesses, less context hunting, which can take some time and higher factuality. You're going to the origins. And again, from a KPI, acceptance uplift on tool assisted generations with MCP, success and latency. All that prevents you from guessing if your AI strategies are effective, and allows you to make sure that you're going down the right path here with this process. One thing I will say too, we've done Context 7 MCP for our API environment, and it's really helped. We have our onboarding process into the API environment for external folks is very simple, almost a little too quiet, which is a good problem to have. I'll knock on some wood here, but what we have found is between our developer portal, which is out on developers.semify.com, that is our true open API 3.0 specification documentation, which is to me, the proper way to document your REST endpoints. Don't send Google Docs or Word documents. I think it's embarrassing. It's a just doesn't shine well for Cold Fusion. If you're going to write some Cold Fusion services, go the Open API route and put those out there on your documentation. Make them look like they're good RESTful services. But having the MCP on the backup too is really nice. We're working with people that are just like us, and they're trying to integrate into your system. And any edge that you can give them for the ability to auto-generate connections and interact with your applications through AI just makes it easy. So when we first rolled out the enterprise environment, there was always meetings needed and a lot of questions that needed to be asked and questions. And so we went the documentation route, the MCP route, and then we made it very AI friendly. And now I think about the only question I ever get is, can we have our live keys now? Which happened today. Actually, I think we spent probably a total of 3 minutes talking about our APIs. And again, this all fills in the void of not just looking at AI from an internal usage, but how can we make our systems more friendly for external consumers? And we've hit a home run with that. That is, without a doubt, one of the easiest things to measure, as we have seen very little feedback and concerns with our API integration. So it reduces a lot of manual time, which is a big benefit. We don't have senior engineers having to get on the phone and walk through integration guides. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's self-documenting. It has reduced a lot of overhead for that, which again, the whole point of me, Roland, the whole point of us trying to get AI into our systems is to reduce the manual hours, which that's what we're doing. We want them to be working on advanced things. We're hiring into AI. Like I don't. It's not reducing our team size. We've integrated more and more AI and reduced manual efforts, and all we've done is hire, which is I think a really positive story with the direction of where we're trending with our AI usage. So been very beneficial. A couple other things here too. I don't know if we've got a lot going on with this. All I say is that authority mapping is a big part of it. So those machine readable docs. So again, we did the Open API 3.0 specifications and making sure that those are very AI friendly and readable. We've done a lot internally with AI in looking at our releases and providing summaries. We've been POCing actually architectural document creation from our business requirements. That's another POC that we're measuring right now that we've had very good success with. And we have a couple of really exciting things, as I mentioned, our early detection bot, our early detection debugging and code sampling. And then there's some pretty neat things that we're looking at for linting as well. And again, that the existing project out there, I know is a bit stale, but we've got some POCs that we're running that I think are going to be very beneficial in our pipeline process. And so a lot of these things are all centered and focused around AI, but not fully dependent. It's just we're using AI to bridge a lot of those gaps and bring it together. So just a recap here on BugBot. It's been, for us, definitely a good step forward when we wrote this. Again, we're looking to continually improve these cycles and using it more and more. I will say another thing, we're using AI a lot to detect bad bots, any kind of malicious traffic as part of an early triage and helping us to identify those with some WAF rules that we're continually monitoring. So yet another AI use case. It's not just CF, but in general, things that we've detected through these measurements where we know that AI can do a really good job at picking that up for us with a very low fail rate. And so some of the things we're measuring monthly, some of this is quarterly. There's some things we do quarterly, there's some things monthly, and there's some things daily. Cost is a big one. I'm very paranoid about that. We have some guardrails in place to protect us from outrageous usage, and we're very smart about how we scale down those models automatically. But cost is always obviously an important part of the measure. Quality and safety, coverage deltas, reverts, incidents, all that's in there. And then we continually measure our SDLC. In fact, I think we've relaunched it 3 times, and we're in the process of coming up with a new PR, our new SDLC, as we are using more and more AI, how we want to modify and bend the rules to better use it, which has been great. In fact, I expect to have a lot of major developments by summer for some big initiatives that we've POC. We've had some good data coming back so far on. And then our leading indicators, acceptance rates, chat code conversions, test gen usage, MCP success, context coverage, all that comes into play. And as far as the governance and safety, we're constantly reviewing the models, looking at data retention, making sure that our security settings are correct, that the team's using it correctly. We don't want anyone going out to any third-party tooling. It needs to stay inside of our Cursor AI. And we've got a very generous offering of the models in there. So there's nothing that you can't do. Audit trails, we do spot check those. We link it to session IDs. We can link it back to PRs, and we can find out how much percentage usage we are at. And then what we can always review the acceptance on that as well. And then any high risk paths do require senior reviews from our engineers and mandatory testing. And we're doing some really neat things now where we're trying to identify in an automated peer review process what we would qualify as high risk, low risk, and then use more of an AI at that point to focus on it. So from an ROI snapshot, which is something I'm always concerned about, overall, these numbers have changed a little bit, but about 40% time reduction, dev time reduction. I think it's probably 30, and I believe that's the realistic number, and I think we're going to be there for a while. About 50 to 60 hours of debugging tape per period, and of course, I'm talking about sprint cycles. And then there's the calculations that we're using for the hours saved over the loaded rates, LM costs, and then that's our net per month. And then we track in the cost per merge PR. Yeah, I'm that inattentive about it. Tokens per accepted line and utilization by repo, which is all very important from a financial standpoint. So real quick, we're just about done here, and I want to show you the cycle time next, and I'll open up for questions. Our outcomes since September, we've got 13 to 14 active users each month, but we have 20 in the system. That's from 9 when we last presented on this, so it shows sustained adoption. There are 270 PRs reviewed since September. We were originally at 189 in the first cycle of testing, and then 80% of the issues resolved since September. I don't remember, I think we were at 54. So we've seen a big jump on that as well. AI now generates 33% of all committed code, up from 29%. And then the resolution rate is up from 57 to 80. And from our hours saved, our estimates, which I think this is on the conservative side, we're going to peg it right around 196. I think it's probably closer to 215, but that seems awfully lofty based on a couple other things I've been looking at from data points on that. But generally, it's significant. It tells a positive story. So of course you're going to say, yeah, well, how bad is your bug defect ratios? Well, I got 2 stories to tell here on that real quick. This is our total PR cycle times going over the full calendar year of 2025. We started measuring in 24. 2025 is where we introduced heavy into AI. We also had a team member go on maternity leave for a big chunk of that cycle, which is amazing because it knocked our QA department down by 50%. The story that we're going to tell here is that we have continually pushed the PRs and the deliverables out to a production state. We are dropping our cycle times significantly, which means the AI rates I think are coming in. Basically, the AI supplemental checks are really helping. To me, we went from like a count of greater than 14 on the cycle times for testing against these PRs with a deployment last January at 96. December, we hit an all-time high for us at 122, and this included onboarding 2 new junior developers who were actively in the process. Our cycle time greater than 14 dropped to 13, which is phenomenal. The numbers are trending in the right direction. AI is working for us, and I will say this too: our task to bug ratio. When I started this cycle testing, we were close to around 70%. Now, some of that was mislabeled. We maintained 2 quarters of sub 20% on the task to bug ratio. And if you ask me, that's a pretty astounding number. And we have integrated into AI complexities. We've integrated to junior dev members. We've added a lot of developers to the team. Overall, we've incorporated a lot of rules. We've developed new processes. We've put in new SDLCs. All that noise, all that confusion, all that chaos has yielded really positive results. So if there's naysayers on it, fine. We're going to continue to leverage it. It has been a game changer for us, and that's what I got. All right. Questions? So Leonardo, wondering if your metrics are you using the AI itself? Um, I don't know. Can you clarify just a bit? Are you talking about the whole team in AI, or just like myself? Let's see. Uh, no. So as far as a manual process goes, no. So we're using Cursor AI as our IDE, and that is plugged into the AI platforms and then the models. So we're using it directly integrated through our IDE. A lot of the other data points and then some of the other processes, those are automated and those are on triggers and different jobs. And then we've got some Lambda items that run as well. But it's a mix. But no, the engineers are all empowered with AI and they have it directly on their IDE.
There are also a couple of questions in the Q&A pod.
Oh, am I not in the right one? Sorry. Let me expand that. BK had a question about the AI in the loop pairing for the junior and senior developers. Yeah, absolutely. So we have an onboarding document. Some of it actually was generated with AI, but all of those data points and the schematics that we've done for that framework, we have documented it. It is a rinse and repeat for us in the future. And then automated and AI powered for finding code vulnerabilities in this pairing. Yes, we have done some of that. We do have additional checks that we have on our build pipelines, Rama, and we continually grow those points. So we're always looking at every angle to inject as much automation as we can. We've done a lot at the very far left, which is what I would consider all the way down to the local level, all the way out to our production servers. And so there's a lot of intelligence that we've installed along the way, and we're constantly looking for different ways to shore that up. And some of the areas that you're asking about code vulnerabilities, we're doing some things with our build pipelines very early in the stage. And then our junior developers have been instrumental on helping we're trying to teach them with log monitoring and how AI is helping with that, and looking at our data patterns and request for unhealthy traffic we prefer not have it hit our servers. So we're doing some things here. We're letting those patterns also help us teach us what those vectors are, and then using AI to help augment explanations, which I think has been very beneficial for the junior devs to get some insight too on why certain things happen the way they do with the request. So we've got a lot. There's a lot moving around with that part.
Brian, you also have a $50 gift card that you could give away.
Yeah, is Dana Robinson still in here? He's the legend. He gets the card.
Yes. Okay. Congratulations, Dana. So I think we'll have to wrap up here. It's already time for the next session. Thank you, Brian. It was a great session,
Thank
as usual.
you. Yep.
Thank you.